let's do it. Chapter 21, Mishnah Aleph. משנה זו דנה בעניין טלטול מוקצה בשבת, אגב דבר שאינו מוקצה. This Mishnah is going to discuss, are you allowed to take something which is muktzeh in Shabbat, if
not muktzeh.
Because of something that is not muktzeh.
Something that
is muktzeh because of something which is not muktzeh.
אבל it's not muktzeh.
Because of something which is not muktzeh. Let's take an example. Let's take an example. You've got money in your tefillin bag or in your talis bag. You take money. Are you allowed to carry from the talis bag from one room to another room even though it has money? Maybe you're allowed to, maybe you're not allowed to. That's the question.
Talit is not muktzeh, but what's in there is muktzeh.
That's right.
That's why he said
that's it. Are you allowed to move the whole thing? Because it's going to give us the thing. Again, don't learn halacha over here, we're learning mishnayos. Yeah. Notel adam et bno. A person is allowed to pick up his son, b'bayit or b'chatzer b'shabbat. Obviously, we're not talking about the public domain. In his house or in his yard on Shabbat. Ve'aven beyado. And the small child is holding a stone. So you're allowed to pick up your child. We see in what circumstances, even though the child has a stone in his hand. So now you're carrying a stone. You don't have to pick up a stone, but you're picking up your child. It's my fault that he's holding the stone. So it says, in some circumstances, you're allowed to do that. אף על פי שיש ביד הבן אבן. Even though the child is holding a stone, she muktzeh. And we discussed, this is muktzeh. But what's the problem? It's a baby.
He doesn't want to throw it.
Exactly.
No, I want it.
Exactly. ואין הבן רוצה לזרקה. He's a baby, he doesn't want to throw it away, it's his toy. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it explains, we're not talking about any case. It's not even the child is 5 years old, obviously. You're talking about the baby, he doesn't understand what's going on. שהמדובר כאן בתינוק שיש לו געגועים על אביו. We're talking about a child, they say, Daddy, pick me up, pick me up, pick me up. Somebody who's crying, he's a baby, toddler. הוא מפרש רש"י, שאם לא יתלנו יכלהו. It's not that you're allowed to pick him up, really. It says the baby is crying his heart out. He's really like having a panic attack over there. He wants his father. You have to help him. ולא העמידו חכמים טלטול שלא בידיים במקום סכנת חולי. It says, he's going to throw up from crying. Baby starts to cry, they're going to start to throw up. It says, he's becoming sick. It says, only on that condition you're allowed to pick him up. Not in every condition. אף על פי שאין בה סכנת נפשות. I know the baby is not going to die, but you're still allowed to pick him up even though he's not going to die. You are allowed to. ויש מפרשים, לפי שיש בדבר צר לתינוק. Some says, even without danger, the baby has pain in it. אף על פי שאין בזה סכנת חולי, even though he's not afraid that something physical is going to happen, it's spiritually. He has pain spiritually. עוד אמרו בגמרא, another thing they say in the Gemara, שדווקא אם אבן בידו התירו לאביו לתלו. It says, when is the father allowed to pick up the son? It's if he has a stone in his hand. If he has a stone in his hand. If he has a different kind of muktzeh, you wouldn't be allowed to pick him up. What's the different kind of muktzeh? A different kind of muktzeh is, for example, money. So he says, with money, you're not allowed to pick him up. But with stone, you are allowed to pick him up. What's the difference? What's the logic? אבל אם דינר בידו, but if the baby is holding a coin in his hand, אסור לאביו לתלו. The father is not going to pick up, not allowed to pick up the son in such a condition. Why? שמא ייפול הדינר מיד התינוק ויבוא אביו להרים את הדינר ולטלטלו. Because stone you're not going to pick up if it falls. But money you automatically, it's subconsciously, the stone subconsciously, who wants the stone? But the money, subconsciously you forget it's Shabbat and you're going to come pick it up. You see money, you put it in your pocket. Same thing. Same idea is going to be, what about a basket? וכלכלה, what about a basket? וכן נוטה אדם כלכלה, סל מלאה פירות, as long as it has fruits inside. Let's say there's a basket with fruits inside, והאבן בתוכה, and it has a stone inside of it. And he needs the basket somewhere else. So now the basket Exactly like the case that we said with the talis bag.
The
It
stone
has a
is
stone
muktzeh.
inside, and the fruits are not muktzeh. But he's taking the entire basket. Is he allowed to move the entire basket? So it says, you're allowed to. That's what it says. Again, don't jump into conclusion, because the Gemara says, no, not so quick, but we see soon.
And with the talis one, would it be different if it was your tefillin were in there, because they're muktzeh on Shabbat, but it's not kesef?
That's right. Tefillin is not as muktzeh as a stone or as money. But for our purposes of movement, it's almost the same. For the movement process, you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do this. Tefillin is less muktzeh than other things, because tefillin has a use for Shabbat. You can also actually you can even wear tefillin on Shabbat, in some circumstances. For example, we say, when can you wear tefillin in Shabbat? No. There's a case where it says.
Or you found it in the street.
Oh, if I in the street, that's one thing, one place. There's another place that a person has a panic attack, for example, and every time he has a panic attack, he feels good wearing tefillin. So a person who, God forbid, has a panic attack on Shabbat, so it says he can wear the tefillin because it calms him down. So there are certain places where you see that it has some kind of use. So, yeah. והאבן בתוכה, שכל שהוא בסיס לדבר האסור ולדבר המותר, this is the rule. If it's a base, the basket is a base for something forbidden and something permitted. הרי הוא ניטל בשבת, you're allowed to move the whole object on Shabbat. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it explains. It says, when is the case you're allowed to move it? Don't jump into conclusion, yeah, you're allowed to move it. No. You're not allowed to move it. It's when you have no other choice, then you're allowed to move it. What do you mean you don't have other choice? He's going to give the examples. שמדובר כאן בפירות לחים. It says, we're talking about wet fruits over here. Wet fruits, for example, כגון תותים וענבים, for example, berries or grapes which are moist. שאם ינערה מן הסל, because the right way to do it is to shake the basket, everything jumps out with the stone, and
then put it back in the basket.
And then that's right. That's the right way to do it. But over here, you can't shake the strawberries out or the grapes out because they're wet and they're going to become dirty with the sand.
Wash them.
No. You don't have to make them dirty for the eating. שאם ינערם מן הסל יתלכלכו באפר וימאסו, they're going to become dirty. אבל אם היו בכלכלה פירות יבשים, but if there were dried fruits inside the basket, כגון שקדים ואגוזים, like nuts, מנער את הפירות. Then you have to shake it, ואסור לטלטל את הכלכלה עם אבן. Shake everything out of the basket and then take the basket. Don't take the basket because of that. Okay. So it's only if you don't have any other choice, then you do that. So the same thing with your tefillin bag. If you can take not tefillin bag, with the talis bag, if you can take the talis out, take the talis out. Don't carry. Don't carry the whole thing. For our example. Yeah. ואף בפירות רטובים, it says even if they're wet, אם אפשר לסלקם לצידי הכלכלה ונלאר מתוכם את האבן, if you can put them in a nice place which is not dirty on the side and then shake the stone out, that's even preferable, even if they're wet. אסור לטלטל את הכלכלה עם האבן, you're not allowed to take the basket with the stone, אלא שמדובר כאן בכלכלה פגומה. So what are we talking about over here? Over here we're talking about a basket. And the basket has a big hole. And somebody put a stone to plug the hole, so the fruits are not going to fall down. שהאבן נעשת לה כדופן. So it's almost part of the basket now. ונמצא שאי אפשר להשתמש בכלכלה בלא האבן. Now you cannot use the basket for any use without the stone. So that's the only example you'll be able to use it. ויש סוברים, and there are those who think, שאם האבן משמשת דופן לכלכולה, מותרת לה בשבת. So it says, if that stone becomes part of the basket, then you're allowed to move it on Shabbat, אף כשאין פירות וכיוצא בהם, even if there's no other fruits inside of it, because it is part of the basket. Definite opinions. Okay.
ומטלטלים בשבת.
Next one.
So much you can...
No, it's a new one.
It's a new thing?
It's a new thing. ומטלטלים בשבת, you're allowed to move a basket or to move together in Shabbat, תרומת טמאה עם הטהורה. Truma, which is tameh, which is defiled, with a pure and unpure truma. Now, the pure truma, I understand why you're allowed to use it, because you're allowed to eat it. So you're allowed to move it. But the unpure truma you're not allowed to eat. So how can you move them? So one is muktzeh, completely on Shabbat, it's not allowed to be eaten, and one is not muktzeh. But it says if they happen to be on the same thing, you're allowed to move them. Let's see how. Agav teorah. In other words, you moving the unpure one because of the pure one. שכן תרומת טמאה כשהיא לעצמה אסורה. Because unpure truma, when it's by itself, it's forbidden. בטלטול, in movement. לפי שנערו לאכילה, because nobody's allowed to eat it. אבל יחד עם תרומת טהורה, but together with pure truma, ועם החולין, or עם החולין, or together with produce which is not truma at all, מותר לטלטלה. You're allowed to move it. If they're both in the same basket, for example. The pure and impure are in the same basket.
But it doesn't, once you put pure and impure, it becomes to be impure, no?
If you touch it. If you're touching the basket. You're touching the basket over here. There's pure and impure.
אבל זה אחד על השני או...
They're dry.
Yeah, they're dry. They're dry.
They separate.
They're dry. They're touching each other, but they're dry.
Oh.
They're not wet. You say, they're dry. ואף בזה אמרו בגמרא, and even in this the Gemara says, לא שנו אלא שטהורה למטה וטמאה למעלה. It says, when we allowed to move such a basket? We're allowed to move such a basket only when the pure is below the unpure. Because if the pure is above the unpure, just take it. But if the pure is below the unpure, then you'll be touching the unpure. Yeah, you don't want to touch the impure. Yeah? And the impure is muktzeh. Even if you don't want to touch, you're not allowed to. So you're allowed to move the whole thing because of it. אבל טהורה למעלה וטמאה למטה, but if the pure is on top and the unpure is on the bottom, נוטל את הטהורה ומניח את הטמאה. Then just take the pure one, the one you want to eat. Take it.
With your hands?
Yeah.
And leave the טמאה למטה.
And leave the טמאה. The טמאה is not to touch. Don't touch. ואפילו הטהורה למטה, even if the unpure is on the bottom, even if the pure is on the bottom, אין מטלטלים עמה את הטמאה, אלא כשהיו פירות המטנפים בקרקע. You do that exactly the same step as before. First of all, try to uncover it and then put it back. שאם ינער אותם מהכלי תקלקלו. It's only in the case that you're going to pour them out, they're going to become spoiled. אבל אם היו אגוזים ושקדים וכיוצא בהם, but if they were hard stuff, מנער את הכל מהכלי, take everything out of the vessel, ונוטל הטהורה ומניח את הטמאה. Take the pure one and leave the unpure. ברם, אם היה צריך למקום הכלי, what happened if you need the space of the vessel, of the basket itself, בין שהטהורה הייתה למעלה, בין שהייתה למטה, מטלטל הכל כאחד. So we said, once you pick it up, because you need the space, got nothing to do with the thing, so once you pick it up, now you can put it wherever you want, and you can put it. רבי יהודה אומר, רבי יהודה says, אף מעלים את המדומה באחד ומאה. You also allowed to take the dmai, to bring out the dmai in 100. Let's see what it means. Se'at truma. So we learned this in, you remember, years ago. So se'at truma, we have a truma that belongs to the Kohen, a measurement of one se'ah, שנפלה לתוך פחות מ-100 חולין, that fell inside less than 100 חולין. Now, if it's more than 100 חולין, it's nullified. But over here, it fell less than 100 חולין. הכל נעשה מדומה. Now the whole thing becomes דמאי. In other words, now the value, it's not תרומה anymore. כלומר, שכל התערובת דינה כתרומה. Now the whole thing becomes like תרומה. In other words, you have to eat the whole thing now in purity, which means the value just 1/10 of it. ואסורה באכילה לזרים. And the market now is only the Kohen market, it's not the general market. אבל אם נפלה לתוך 100 חולמינים, התרמה בטלה. But if it fell into 100 parts, then it's nullified. והכל מותר לזרים, and it goes to the regular market. אלא שיש להרים שאה אחת מתוך התערובת וניתנה לכהן. But you have to give one שאה and give it to the Kohen, like we said. כדי שלא לגזול את התרומה שייכת לכהן, not to steal what belongs to him. והשאר חולין ומותר לזרים. And the other remains חולין, and you're allowed to eat it yourself, and you're also allowed to give it to somebody else, sell it in the regular market. משנתנו בא ללמד, our Mishnah comes to teach, שלדעת רבי יהודה, according to רבי יהודה, מותר להעלות מתוך התערובת את השאה לכהן בשבת. You're allowed to separate this שאה to the Kohen on Shabbat. ואין זה נקרא מתקן בשבת. This is not called fixing on Shabbat. Usually you're not allowed להפריש תרומות to separate תרומה on Shabbat. But this is not considered to be להפריש תרומה. Why? לפי שמותר לאכול מהתערובת אף קודם שהרים מן התשאה לכהן. Because it's דמאי, it's ספק. You're allowed to eat it specifically even before, that's right. והיינו שנותן עיניו בצד זה להעלותו לתרומה ואוכל בצד אחר. It says how, but specify, it says okay, this part over here of the pile, this is I'm going to give to the truma. So if you're allowed to do that, you're also allowed to take and move. וכיוון שיכול לאכול אף בלא העלאת שאה, and since he can move it even without giving the שאה, אין העלאת התיקון. It's not considered to be fixing, because it's in the mind, and in the mind it's not fixing. והרב מברטנורה מבאר הטעם, ברטנורה says the reason, לפי שלדעת רבי יהודה, התרומה שנפלה לתוך החולין, הרי כאילו מנוחה לבדה. Because it says, it's like you consider it that it's there on itself, ואינה מעורבת, and it's not mixed. וכשעולה באחד ומאה, אותה התרומה שלה שהיא העולה. So it's like, since you can take it out, it's considered already like it was taken out. That's what he's saying. Since you can take it out in your mind, we consider it like it is already out.
But I don't understand, why can you take it out? How? Because you see exactly what fell down?
No, it doesn't have to be this one. Any part. Any part. הילקח כשמעלה את השאה בשבת, אין בזה שום תיקון. ואין הלכה כרבי יהודה, and the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. It says, the question is, what's got to do with us? We're talking about muktzah over here. Why is Rabbi Yehuda telling us this? יש מבארים, there are those who explain, ששייכותם של דברי רבי יהודה לרישא היא בזה. The reason why it was put here, this part, the words of רבי יהודה, שהואיל ומותר להעלות את המדומה באחד מאה. It says, since you're allowed to touch and to move it, הרי שמותר גם לטלטלו. It says, that's why you're allowed to move it. In other words, you would say it's dmai. Why are you allowed to move it? So it says, it's not mine, it's truma. Because that's right. That's
you can turn it. It's got a potential.
And according to Bartenura, that's right. שאילו היה אסור לעלות את מדומה בשבת, because if that was not allowed, הרי אסור גם לטלטלו בשבת. You wouldn't even be allowed to move it on שבת. כיוון שאסור לאכילה זרים, קודם עלת האחד תרומה, because a stranger may not eat it, but a Kohen. So since over here, a stranger may eat it even without moving it, therefore a person may even move it and it's not considered to be muktzeh. ואף על פי שמותר כל המדומה לכהן, and even though that the Kohen of course is allowed to eat the entire thing, אין זה דומה לתרומה שמותרת בטלטול אף לישראל. It's not similar to truma that everybody is allowed to move it, even a Jew. משום שראויה לכהן, because it is befitting to a Kohen. לפי שהתרומה עומדת להינתן לכהן. You can say it for a Jew, it's more problematic because the dmai, I understand, belongs to you a little bit. Because it's a suffix. But truma is not yours. Why are you touching it? It belongs to the Kohen. You're not allowed to touch it at all. It's muktzeh. He says, no. That's why Rabbi Yehuda says, you still be allowed to move it on Shabbat, even though it doesn't belong to you at all. אבל המדומה אינו עומד להינתן כולו לכהן. The מדומה is not everything for the Kohen. אלא להרים אינו אחד ולאכול השאר לזרים. So that's why it was brought over here in a case where it's a little bit, it's not even your food. It's the food of a Kohen. You're allowed to still move it and it's not muktzeh for you. Because it's part of the dmai.